In this video, I'm going to explain what backend and what front-end development are in under 3 minutes. Hello everyone and welcome back. This is the first video of a series I like to call Tech Explained in Under 3, where I'll be attempting to explain tech concepts in, well, you've guessed it, under 3 minutes. And today's topic is going to be backend versus front-end development. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. When it comes to building any mobile web or desktop application, there are two main pillars we need to consider: the front end and the back end. Front end development has to do with everything you can see, touch, or interact with. So we're talking about things like layouts, forms, buttons, colors, tabs, banners, and so on. While backend development has to do with everything behind the scenes, like the functionality, fetching and updating of data, algorithms, API, and anything that brings about business logic. Now, a very simple way to think about this is that the backend is like the gears and the engine that drive the car forward, while front end is how the car looks like on the outside and how shiny it is. Let's consider another real-life analogy, because y'all know how much I love analogies, and if you don't, well, now you do. Let's say you go to a restaurant. The front end aspect, like we just mentioned, is everything you see and interact with. So in this restaurant analogy, that would be the nicely decorated dining area and the staff that you interact with, while the back end is the behind the scenes functionality aspect of all of it. So in this analogy, we can assume that it's the kitchen that you can't see and the cooks preparing the food for you. Before I go on, there's a concept we need to talk about, which is the API, or the application programming interface. And the easiest way to think of it is to imagine plugs into the data that the back end exposes to the front end and that the front end uses to communicate with the back end. So let's say if I was the back end and you were the front end, I might want to expose to you 3 plugs of data: one for my age, one for my nationality, and one for my height. As the front end, at some point you might want to find some information or data about me. And so for that, you will need to use one of those 3 plugs. But you will only be able to access data about me just through those plugs that I decide to expose to you. If you use my age plug, I'll tell you that I'm 26. If you use my nationality plug, I'll tell you that I'm Egyptian. If you use my height plug, I'll tell you that I'm 188 centimeters or 6'2". You get the idea. But if, for example, you want to learn how many languages I speak, you won't be able to access that information because as the back end, I'm not exposing that plug of data for you. So back to our restaurant analogy. You go inside the restaurant and you start interacting with its front end, or in this case, its waitstaff. The waiter comes to you and hands you a menu, which in this case is the API of our analogy, since the menu contains all the available plugs into the data, or in this case, the meals that the kitchen can prepare for you. In the same way that an API can only return to you the data that the backend exposes, the kitchen of a restaurant can only cook for you the meals that are actually on the menu. Well, there are exceptions, but we're not talking about that. You request an order from the front end or the waiter, who takes your order, which for the sake of this example, let's say you're having a medium rare steak. How delicious. The waiter then sends it through the steak API plug to the back end, or in this case, the cooks in the kitchen who then prepare it for you. And once it's ready, the front end or the waitstaff gets that delicious steak right back to you. Now, let's talk about the technologies. In regards to the technologies used, there are 3 main technologies that are used when it comes to front-end development. And they're usually used in conjunction with one another. So the first one that we need to consider is HTML, which is a set of instructions that create UI elements on a screen. Then we have the CSS, which is basically a set of rules for how to display those UI elements on the screen. And third and finally, we have JavaScript, which, among other things, sends and receives data to and from the backend. Now, for backend development, there are many choices to pick from, like Python, also JavaScript, Ruby, PHP, Java, you name it. For the most part, there are a lot of similarities among these languages, so ultimately moving from one language to another should not be that difficult. And time. I guess I'm a little over time, but oh well, I guess I'm just that dangerous. I hope this was helpful in helping you understanding what the back-end and what front-end development are. If you want to start coding with either of those technologies, either back-end or front-end, then I highly recommend you to check out my other video where I share a simple, easy to follow actionable plan that can get you started on this journey as soon as possible. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.